What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? A little bit of a late start, as Larry C points out. Definitely Joker's fault. Yep, he was delaying me out. That just made him pop up behind me. I shouldn't have said anything. No, not poor Joker's fault. He's been just chilling. He's got a little bit of every summer he gets little itchy spots underneath his. He's a big furry, hairy dog, and he gets little itchy spots. So he's dealing with one of those, unfortunately, today. So he's not in the greatest of moods. Just been kind of hanging out. Unfortunately, going at his side a little bit, so he's just got like a big sore red spot, but he's hopefully going to keep it down. He just left the room, knows we're talking about him. But what's going on, gang? Welcome to the MLB DFS Lineup Card show for Wednesday. Almost said Thursday. Who can keep track of these things? It's an interesting slate. We've got two different six-gamers to talk about. FanDuel starting up at 6:40, so we're going to get out of here probably... hopefully 5:40, shoot for something like that. Shoot for like an hour-long show. Not that much to talk about on a short slate. Some weird pitching. I think it's a deceptively thin pitching slate overall. We have 6 games on DraftKings. That one starts up at 7:05. So DraftKings is including the Reds and Angels game, the second game that takes place out in Los Angeles, second game of the doubleheader. But they're not including the Rockies at Rays game at 6:40. FanDuel's doing it the other way around. So it's going to be an interesting one to talk through. Looks like we've got a good group here in the chat already. Oh, congrats again as we get started to, once again, the most consistent winner we've got, Dimitri. Big Meech. Coming out with another excellent night last night. Couple K in his pockets. Forget what the exact finish was, but he posted it in the Discord. He shouted it out on Twitter. So just another killer job. But everybody else out there, you guys know that when I say somebody out there go win something, I'm not always only talking to Dimitri, right? Let's get some other wins out there. Let's get some big ones out there. Let's put some cash in some people's pockets. We've got Shannon Lambert in the chat. We've got Steven Leibowitz. Calvin Dunn's here. Matt Tomlinson's here. Kevin O's here. Phil Still's here. Po Degen Stoner's always here. Am I the only one that just thinks the Po Degen Stoner's just always on YouTube chats? Like he just moves from one to the other? He's here. He's one of our regulars. He's always in the Discord. He's always hanging out with us. Don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't appreciate the guy. But I'm just saying, like, if you popped into some other channel, like, you know, if you go over to like High Times or something like that, if they've still got a YouTube channel, he's probably hanging out in there too, don't you think? I get that impression. What's up, Po Degen? How you doing, buddy? Throwbacks is here. Kevin O's here. Think we got everybody so far. Shannon Lambert says, I only care about donating to the pod every day. That's awfully generous. It's nice. Hey, that's what this thing is sometimes, right? We're all feeding Po Degen says, I feel seen. We're all feeding the beast. We're all contributing to one another's bankrolls on certain nights, and you know, hopefully you just come out the other side having extracted more than you put in at the end of the entire run. Really, you know, it's a lifetime bankroll. Ryan S., what's going on, buddy? Appreciate the content. I appreciate you showing up, Ryan. Appreciate you enjoying it. We'll have more coming into football season. Po Degen says he's doing great. It's awesome. Aloysius is here. What's up, Aloysius? Welcome, welcome. So we've got a good group hanging out. Hit the like button early so you don't have to remember to do it later on. Hit the subscribe if you haven't. I'm going to try and stop shaking the table. I'm going to try and keep Joker down over here. Of course, now he's all excited. He got his name drops on the show. He knows he's being talked about. He knows he's popular. He knows he's a character on the show. Shohei stuff is weird on DK. So it looks like they put him in now, Lair. They were waiting to see whether he was going to pitch the first game, possibly play in the outfield or whatever the first game. So now it's just a matter of whether or not he's actually in the Angels lineup. But he popped back into DK. He's 6,700 over on DK for in the outfield and at first base tonight. So if you're playing on DK, you do have the Ohtani option as a hitter in that late game. And then I believe it's going to be Reed Detmers pitching that game unless anything changed there. So we'll get to that one. As I said, I think it's a weird slate because you've got that wrinkle, which has now worked itself out. They held it off. They had him out of the pool entirely earlier in the day until they announced what that lineup was going to be for that first game. But now they dropped them back in. But we've also got some limited spots. We've got a couple guys like, excuse me. Let me open up the projections here. So we'll start with the pitching pool just to illustrate the interesting nature of it. I think these two guys are rock solid up at the top. You've got Detmers on the DK slate, which is a nice piece of value. And then you've got Kershaw here, but I think Kershaw is still working with like an 85 pitch count. That's a 5-inning projection. He's facing the Guardians. It's a premium matchup. I think we go to it, but it does put a bit of an overall ceiling on his start. I don't think he's getting I don't think he's getting into the 7th by any means. I think it's a thin path to 6 innings. He's got to pitch super efficiently to hit that. And if he's striking out his fair share of Guardians, then he's probably not, he's probably working that pitch count up pretty quickly. So I think this is realistic, but I think it's capped overall as compared to like the Kevin Gausmans of the world in particular, to lesser degrees the Charlie Mortons of the world, the Savalis of the world, the Reed Detmerses. The same story with Chris Sale in a much worse matchup. He's going up against the Astros. Tons of quality when they face a lefty. Whether or not Jordan Alvarez is in that Astros lineup, I'm concerned about the Chris Sale spot. I think he's also going to be capped at 5 innings. He projects out okay. 9,300, 8,500. This is also a 5-inning projection. I capped them at 5. I just think it's another one where the ceiling is capped for a name brand pitcher that has a pretty high price tag. So I think it's really interesting there. And then you get really limited options like Severino, who's maybe a dart throw, but probably not against an okay enough Washington lineup that is a low strikeout group. So I think even in a good start, he's probably coming out after 5. I think they just say, hey, 5 good innings. Thanks, Sevy. Take a seat, kid. Good job. Pat him on the butt. Pull him out of the game. Really, really dicey option there. The price is right. The projection is even okay for that money, but really limited against a low strikeout group. He's been terrible. He hasn't made a good start that I can remember all season. Quintana maybe would be an option, but he's facing the Braves. Urquidy also has a bit of a cap on his innings, and he's facing the Red Sox. Then you get Gomber down here on the FanDuel slate. You're talking about Xavier Curry for value against the Dodgers. Brett Kennedy also against the Angels. I mean, very limited, deceptively thin pitching slate. So it's going to be an interesting one. I'm not really planning on rostering Sale, Dennis. Dennis asks if I'm worried about Sale's velo dip. I'm worried about everything, Chris Sale. Like I said, this is a 5-inning projection, but I hate the matchup. I hate the price. I think he's $1,000 too expensive on both sites. If he was 8,300 on FanDuel, 75 on DK, I'd be talking about him as, all right, he's probably capped at 5 innings. He's in a limited strikeout matchup against a great team, but at least he's cheap. He's not even that. So for me, I'll have him in the pool, but I don't expect to get to a lot of Chris Sale. And yeah, there are concerning things overall. We'll talk about them when we get there, and we can take a look at the pitcher profile. We've got a few minutes. Yeah, that's not a high-end option for me. Craig Piancone still mad at Bobby Miller. Will not be getting a Christmas card from me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he gave that up when they put him back in the 7th, right? He was fairly clean, high scoring through 6, and then he went back. If I'm right about that, I only glanced at the box score at the end. But if I'm right that he gave that up in the 7th, I think that was the first time he pitched in the 7th inning all season. I would chalk that up to mismanagement more than anything else, if that's the case. I think it was. I had a fair amount of Bobby Miller last night. I was cruising. Yeah, that's what I thought, Craig. I was cruising in those lineups, and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, shit, where'd those lineups go? So that was when I noticed that it was 6 1/3, I was like, shit. So makes sense that's what happened. Little bit of mismanagement there. Kid's still a premium prospect. I actually, especially after reading that MLB feature that was just really laser focused on some of his stuff and everything, I dug into him a little bit and looked at some of his stuff plus metrics and really like what I see with that kid. So wasn't surprised by the good start over 6, and then we had that bad little inning. Mike Palm, what's up? Mike says he's late for the show. It's all right. We're just getting started. Just pulled up the pitching board, Mike, so you haven't missed much. I think there's a really interesting option at the top of the FanDuel board in Aaron Savali. I think Reed Detmers gives you a ton of value at 7,600 on the DraftKings slate. Savali you don't get on DK. Detmers you don't get on FanDuel. So 2 interesting options there from the top of the board, joining super expensive, fairly obvious Kevin Gausman in not the greatest matchup in the world against Baltimore. So interesting pitching board. Fanatic, how does another site have Tampa Bay last in top stacks versus Gomber? That's surprising news. I have them 9th by collective fantasy point projections, but 4th by home run potential. Fantasy point wise, they do have some guys who project in a limited sense, and we'll see it when we get them up on the screen. Actually, they're right here. So guys like Curtis Mead, Christian Bethancourt, to a degree Basabe, bring down the projections a little bit. They all look they're all green dots because they're comparative to the Rockies projections on the other side. But some of these guys down toward the bottom do drag down the collective average a little bit. But you can see there's obviously very good home run marks. We've got excellent hitters in this lineup. We've got a lot of very good options in this lineup. Let me see if it got confirmed in the meantime. Where is this game? I'm on the... I hate that this is different between these two boards. I'm going to be doing that all through the show. Ah, good. We did get this confirmed. Josh Lowe in the bottom of the lineup. Jose Siri, Curtis Mead, Brandon Lau in the lineup. That's an upgrade. Lau wasn't in the original lineup, so that's a big upgrade, actually. So, good starting point. This game is on the FanDuel slate, not on the DK slate. I will try to be sensitive to not talking about it too long to bore the DK folks. We'll focus mostly on the games that are on both slates. We'll bore the FanDuel slate at the folks at the end of the show. So, like I said, Savali, tremendous option off the top. Excellent FanDuel projection, leads the entire slate in my projections on the FanDuel scale, and only costs $9,700. 18.4% strikeout rate, but definitely some bonus strikeouts available for him in this terrible Rockies lineup. 27.6% strikeout rate collectively for the Rockies. That includes Charlie at the top at only 12.9%. He's excellent. He's got a 281, 368, 468 triple slash this year. 7 home runs in only 272 plate appearances, 187 ISO. He was having a nice bounce back season before he went out for a few weeks and it ruined his overall sample, but in this 272 plate appearances, he's been very good at the top of the lineup. Was kind of more focused on getting on base and, low strikeout rate, put the ball in play type of a hitter over the last couple of seasons. But the power was back a little bit in a small sample this year. Tovar got himself up to 14 homers, 7 steals, still only 79 WRC plus. He's an interesting enough option from near the top of the lineup, but already into the high strikeout group. Ryan McMahon, lots of lefty power, obviously, but high strikeouts around 30%. Brendan Rodgers, mid-teens power from the right side over the past couple of seasons. Has only made 64 plate appearances this year, a .098 ISO. 37% below average, creating runs on the season, 0 home runs in the tiny sample. Slots in at second base for 2,500. He's a mix-in kind of a guy. If I'm going to Rocky stacks, Nolan Jones is probably my either top priority or second highest priority bat. That would be behind Ryan McMahon, and McMahon will probably be a little bit more popular. Jones, outfield first base, 3,200. Very good lefty hitter. 14.3% barrels, 42.2% hard hits, 12 homers, a 223 ISO on the season. You're going up against a fairly soft tosser in Savali who does pitch to a lot of contact, but even Jones, 33% strikeouts. So there's a lot of strikeouts here for Savali. Elias Diaz, playable catcher. Not that you need a catcher on the FanDuel slate, but he's a viable bat for this team. You just play him like he's a first baseman on this team. 2,800, he's very cheap. He does have 12 home runs this year. He's 83 WRC plus, nothing to write home about. 266, 317, 414 overall. Not great, but an okay power option from late in the lineup. Profar, Montero, Brenton Doyle, kind of flawed hitters. Profar, you guys know I don't like. He hasn't done much of anything at all season long. 73 WRC plus, 8 homers and a stolen base. He's had these for most of the season, it seems like. Montero does have right-handed power upside based on his minor league profile. 8 homers and 17 steals for Brenton Doyle, but 189, 248, 314 with a 37 WRC plus over 307 plate appearances. The Rockies suck. It's a great spot for Savali. All of that was to illustrate how good the spot is for Savali. He was better for strikeouts, too, over the last couple seasons, if you look. 24.1% strikeouts with similar numbers elsewhere in 20 starts and 97 innings last year. 19.9% and 124 and a third, 21 starts the year before. A little bit more on the bone for him, and again, just a premium matchup for strikeouts. So I really like the spot for Savali here. I definitely want to get to Rays, especially with the idea that Brandon Lau's in this lineup now. 9.07 in the home run model. He's got 16 on the season in 329 plate appearances. A premium power hitter at second base. 2,900 is very, very cheap for that hitter. Last year, 8 home runs and 266 plate appearances in a down season, but the year before, 39 homers and 615 plate appearances. A 277 ISO, 137 WRC plus. Was a tremendous player that year. if you get anything resembling that player for this price against this pitcher, I think there's major upside. He does struggle against lefties, but I think the idea for the Rays is, hey, he's in the lineup, he's a major source of power anyway, and we're going to chase Gomber early here and get into that bullpen. So I love that Brandon Lau's in that lineup. Maybe you get one diminished plate appearance against Gomber, and then you get premium Brandon Lau for 3 plate appearances. Really like the option. Yandy Diaz, I love off the top of the lineup, 7.94, decent option in the home run model. Randy Rosarena higher at 8.54, and then Isaac Paredes at 9.97, and Jose Siri all the way down here over the magic number at 10.12 in the home run model. A lot of power showing for the Rays. Curtis Mead, odd zero here. He's not obviously carrying a 0% probability to go in. These aren't percentages, but carrying a 0 probability. He's got a little bit of home run upside, just hasn't delivered any power so far on the show. 0% barrels, a .031 ISO, no historical track record for the home run model to rely on for that hitter. We've got Josh Lowe at the bottom of the lineup, 16 home runs, 24 stolen bases, still carrying a 214 ISO. Pretty good triple slash for the season, a 126 WRC plus. He's been extremely valuable for them. Harold Ramirez up at the top of the lineup, very solid line drive hitter. Hit 9 early home runs this season, but he's more of an average and a line drive hitter, but a good run creation engine for this team. A player who's good at turning the lineup over, keeping things moving from the 3 spot. Only 2,600 in the outfield. Very good option at a cheap price there that people will tend to skip to go to shares of, some of the more premium options. Isaac Paredes with 24 homers. Jose Siri with 24 homers in both less than full plate appearance samples. Just crushing it all season long. Paredes is really valuable with triple position eligibility for only 3,100. Excellent options. Rays up and down the lineup. Aaron Savali. I don't need any Austin Gomber. 7,100. I'm not really a believer. 14.5% strikeouts, a 5.52 ERA, a 4.98 xFIP, 4.08% home runs, and all this premium contact to target with these Rays bats. Give me the Rays. So it's Rays bats and Aaron Savali just kind of tied right at the top. I like both options. And then no real love for Gomber. Hedge position only for the Rockies. If you get carried away with Savali, you can roster a few of the Rockies. My priority bats would be McMahon, Jones, Blackman, and then probably Tovar and Rogers. There's probably just a straight line down, 1 through 6. Just mix and match those guys. Montero's the next most playable guy. Montero's probably more playable on FanDuel than Diaz, just for the idea of power upside at the corners, 2,300. Not a good lineup, though. Let's get into the ones that are on both sites. Hopefully you won't lose all the DK people. Shoei just hit a home run. Perfect. Use up all his power for later. There's a chance that he just doesn't play in the second game tonight, too. That's the major question for that game. That Angels lineup will still be good. It'll still have probably Mike Trout in it, although he might not go to. Did Trout play the early game? That's actually another question I meant to answer prior to the show. It doesn't help that Labs never confirmed the lineup for the early game. If Trout's in the early game, he might not play the second game too. So that let me know about that if you guys are have eyes on that. But yeah, no Trout. All right, so he'll probably play the late game. But that could very well mean there's no Ohtani in the late game. They're still, playing with the idea of chasing a playoff spot, so they'll probably stick him in there. But there is the possibility he doesn't go, so it's a big question mark there. Let's get into the Nationals and the Yankees. Yanks not showing nearly as much quality as they were yesterday. Very diminished in the home run model against Mackenzie Gore, despite the fact that Gore's been giving some up of late. 4.02% home run rate this season, 11.9% barrels. Last year, just 2.2% home runs, 9.7% barrels. Was somewhat effective keeping the ball down, but a lot of hard hits, a lot of exit velo against Gore. But it's not really coming through today for the Yanks. So Shannon should be happy out there. I know it was Shannon that was saying too much Yankees bias in the model yesterday. Didn't do anything to change anything, but is not coming through nearly as much today against Mackenzie Gore, who I do think is a better pitcher. Lefty, though, going up against all these right-handed hitters. There's obviously power in that Yankees lineup. I'll have some just because they're super, super cheap. When I can get Aaron Judge for $4,200, $6,200 as a star caliber price for a superstar player, but then immediately average it down by rostering players that I still believe in Gleyber Torres and Giancarlo Stanton for 41, 42 on DK, 3,029 on FanDuel. Well, that becomes a 3-man, $3,300 average on FanDuel. a three-man $4,800 average on DK, a little more expensive on DK, but you're getting Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton in there against a lefty who gives up all this premium contact and all that power. So I do think on a value basis, the Yanks are on the board, but it's not really coming through. Judge's over the home run mark, but only, by a limited amount compared to where he was yesterday. More than, it was like 1.5 times the magic number yesterday. 24 homers at 336 ISO on the season. Stanton sitting well below the Mendoza line at 196, 281, 430. Does have 18 homers and 303 plate appearances. Still has a 16.1% barrel rate, 47.4% hard hits. But I think the Gore play is very, very viable here. 74 on DK, that's a great value price on this slate. On, again, what I think is a deceptively thin pitching slate. I think that's going to be a major source of value. 8,900, I think he's very playable on the FanDuel slate. He's got a 27% strikeout rate on the year, a 4.38 ERA, a 3.92 xFIP. He started out the season really, really hot and gradually declined on almost a straight line down through the season. But we've seen plenty of people get this Yankees squad. So I think there's plenty of room for shares of Mackenzie Gore on both sites. I don't know what his ownership looks like. If it's aggressively high, you can undercut, but I don't expect that it is. It's probably in the maybe upper single digits, not even on last update over on a different site. So I think there's plenty of room for Mackenzie Gore shares on both sites here. Yankee side of things, Sevy, like I talked about at the top of the show, he does project out kind of okay. I have no faith even in that low projection, though. It's not like what we saw yesterday with Carlos Rodon, where I was like, it comes through even with a limited projection, even with a 5 innings. Sevy's just been flat bad this year. So given that low projection, 5,400, 6,600, the projection's fine for that money. If he delivers even around that, it's okay. You obviously want ceiling. I do think on the right night, there's a little bit of potential for a few additional strikeouts, but the Nationals are not a heavy strikeout group. 20.3% for that confirmed Nationals lineup. You've got a few very low strikeout guys in Keibert Ruiz and Ildemaro Vargas. They don't draw a ton of walks. They don't get on base at great clips. They don't create runs above average, but they don't strike out much. So that limits the upside. Balls in play against Severino this year have been very limiting to Luis Severino's upside. 11.4% barrels, 45.6% hard hits, and a 6.02% home run rate. Not necessarily coming through for home run upside. There's some decent, okay home run marks to chase. Lane Thomas is their best hitter overall. C.J. Abrams has been up and down, but the counting stats are there. 13 home runs, 33 steals. 8% below average overall for run creation, but was better when they promoted him to the leadoff role, went on a little bit of a run. Didn't get above average for run creation, but the counting stats really started to come through. He's been a lot more consistent for DFS production. So at a premium position, I think he's definitely playable off the top against this pitcher. Joey Meneses, Keibert Ruiz through the middle of the lineup. Two good options. Meneses, pretty good hitter, 284, 332, 419. A 103 WRC plus, limited for power, limited for barrels and premium contact. 11 home runs, 5.5% barrels. You'd like to see him improve just the way in which he strikes the ball. Get the launch angle up a little bit, and he'd become more of a home run hitter, which would be more valuable for our purposes anyway. 3,900, 2,700 is cheap for Keibert given his power potential at the plate. Any given slate power upside, he's got 15 homers on the season, a 160 ISO and a 418 slug, but an expected slugging percentage that still outpaces that. Dom Smith, okay at getting himself to first base with a 335 on base, a 265 average is fine, but no power whatsoever in his bat. 4.9% barrels, 29.1% hard hits, 2,700, 2,500 at first base, left-handed hitter if you want to go there. Lefties in Yankee Stadium, you target the right field porch, but has not been much of a home run hitter whatsoever. Maybe he puts a few balls in play, but he's not really striking the ball with much authority. He's not creating runs, 12% worse than average creating runs on the season, only a .078 ISO. Not a lot to love about Dom Smith outside of the lefty bat in Yankee Stadium, part of the concept against Luis Severino. Stone Garrett, 3,700, 2,600. Most of his quality against lefties, but a capable enough guy to throw at Sevy here. 115 WRC plus overall on the season, 9 homers, a 190 ISO, and 268 plate appearances. Strikes the ball fairly well. Jake Alou, low strikeout Vargas from the bottom of the lineup, and then former first-round pick Blake Rutherford for 2,000, 2,300. Mix and match options. Rutherford, another guy, maybe you target cheap lefty with probably very low ownership against a very bad pitcher as a lefty in Yankee Stadium. I do think there's a little bit of upside on the Rutherford play for the dead minimum. Like, why, if you're building 10 national stacks, given the options in this lineup, I would probably have him in at least 3 or 4. 30-40% of my national stacks with Blake Rutherford from the 9 spot for the dead minimum on DK. I don't mind that. If I'm going to this team, like, why not go to this team, right? Like, let's treat it with let's treat it as if there's premium options up and down and really get there. Obviously you want to focus on your CJ Abrams, Lane Thomas, Joey Meneses, Keibert Ruiz part of the lineup as your priorities, but he bolts directly into that if you're using him as a wraparound for the dead minimum on DK, 2,300 on FanDuel. Good value play. To be perfectly clear, Blake Rutherford has never done anything in the major leagues. 31 plate appearances this year, 0 home runs, 0 stolen bases, a 14 WRC plus. That puts him 86% worse than average. That's his only sample. Former first-round pick. It's really all the pedigree there is to go on. But he's in the lineup. He's super cheap. He's a lefty playing in Yankee Stadium against a nothing pitcher, and he's a guy that people will not go to all that aggressively. So I think he's in play. Yankees lineup against Gore. We talked about Judd, we talked about Torres, we talked about Stanton, but the rest of these guys, DJ, a major part of the Yankees' problems, 11% worse than average creating runs, not getting on base, not hitting for any power, not hitting for any average. He's a viable DFS option because he costs $3,100 at first or third base on DK and only $2,500 at 3 positions on FanDuel, and he correlates directly with that 3-man power core. So DJ's in play for as bad as he's been. If you're going to Yankees for value, I do think he's an option at the top of the lineup. Harrison Bader, very infrequent contributor. He's been stuck at 7 homers and 14 steals forever now. 19% worse than average creating runs over 285 plate appearances. Gives you good defense in center field. That's about it these days. Volpe's a better option. Fills a premium position for $3,100, $2,700, but he's also very, very inconsistent. 17 homers, 20 steals, 89 WRC plus in 462 plate appearances. 27.5% strikeouts is too high. Drawing a few more walks, but needs to get more consistent at the plate. Everson Pereira, dead minimum on DK, is definitely an interesting option over there. He's not coming up in this model because FanDuel, for some goddamn reason, still didn't put him on the slate. They had time to get him in yesterday. He's a premium prospect for the New York Yankees, the most valuable property in all of sports, or in baseball anyway. And they didn't bother to put him in. It's just stupid. It's so annoying. He's a very good option if you're going to Yankees for value on DK. Premium prospect. We talked about what he's done in the minors yesterday. Mid-range power, mid-range, good speed on the bases. Decent, should be a decent run creator. Kid that they expect to contribute and be part of this team going forward. Higgy. Decent contact profile at catcher for 2,400, 2,800, 8 home runs on the season. Also struggles to be consistent at all. Oswald Peraza, second base, third base, 2,900, 3 positions on FanDuel for the dead minimum. He becomes super interesting on FanDuel given the 3 position eligibility and the dead minimum price tag. He is interesting on DK for a higher price at second or third. I do think he's in play over there. But at this price on FanDuel, he's very interesting. He's another kid who's a premium prospect for the Yanks. Good infield bat, a little bit of pop, a little bit of speed. Hasn't done much in the show yet, but they're expecting him to hit. So I think if you're going to Yankees for value, you actually go there and you fill out some of these good options from late in the lineup. This is just killing me. This is really annoying. Yanks are a mediocre option tonight. Mid-range stack, a little bit of value there. Nationals probably a little bit more on the bone given that they're facing Severino. They've got a couple of interesting bats in that lineup in Yankee Stadium, but they're bad overall. They're a mid-range priority. Mackenzie Gore is probably the best option in this game. I'd probably say Gore, Nationals, bats, Yankees, bats for value. Severino is not on the board. Something like that. Not a good spot. I'll probably have more Yankees than Nationals, but you don't have to follow me down that rabbit hole. Let's see what we got lineups-wise. This is what, the Blue Jays and the O's? Yep, we got them both. Blue Jays lineup looks about like expected. I'll pop back into the chat in just a sec. As Gunn said yesterday, I need to get myself a second monitor, but I still don't even know how I'd do it. Like, I'd be like... It's like the... Joking Avengers, when he's talking about Nick Fury, how he does it with one eye. He spins. I think that would be me. I'd have to be like, bounce over here, see what's going on in the chat, bounce over there, look at the stats. I don't know. I don't know if I've got the capability of doing that. Kevin O says, I like New York Yankees Nats over himself. Yeah, I don't mind that. I think Sevy's going to get pounded. Let's put it that way. That'll get you at least most of the way there. If the Yanks manage to put a couple on Gore, which isn't out of the question by any means. Stephen Leibowitz says Ohtani has left today's game. Interesting. That's going to make it even more questionable about whether he goes tonight. What is it, the blister thing again? That's been his issue, right? Nationals have played very well since the All-Star game. Yeah, they're a frisky enough team. I think it was a good move putting CJ up in that leadoff spot. It kind of got their lineup going. That top four I do think is fairly talented. They've got interesting options late in the lineup that we talked about. So, yeah, they're a frisky enough bunch. They can put the ball in play on the right night. They do get a lot more quality against lefties. But as Stephen Leibowitz says in the chat, this chat can knock Sevy around. I actually agree with that. Lemon says Gore has a 19% barrel rate, 50% hard hits, and a 162 BABIP the last month. I played Gore against Boston, but I'm stacking the Yankees tonight. Yeah, I don't mind going to the Yanks. They do have tremendous value pricing for some of those hitters in there. There's obviously Aaron Judge and everybody that we talked about there. And yeah, Gore has declined over the course of the season, and those numbers were coming through in terms of his overall numbers, 4+% home run rate on the year. I mean, that was targetable for premium contact for sure. It's just that I do think there's upside for the pitcher as well, given that he's facing the Yankees and how bad they are. Bodijan says main slate getting chilly. 1 1/3 for Shohei. Did he get dinged up? Did he give up a bunch of runs? What happened? Conscious, first day here. Welcome, Conscious. What's going on? Glad you found us. The site is rotoscouts. There's a bunch of free content up on the site. Full article, game-by-game breakdown for this entire slate. Talking about a lot of stuff we're talking about on the show. The Twitter handle's at rotoscouts. Make sure you guys are following it. Hit the likes, hit the retweets, all those good things. Hit the like button on YouTube here. That helps. Steven says no Yoshida for the Sox. We'll get to that one. So let's get into this. Dig into this game a little bit. Obviously, Kevin Gausman, top of the board. I think he's an excellent option on both sides. 10-6, 11,000. He's going to be popular. He's going to be a go-to option across the board. The Orioles are a good lineup against him. It's not an easy matchup. It's not a pushover by any means, but he projects out well. He's got the highest strikeout rate on the slate, 3.24 ERA, a 3.03 xFIP, only walking 6.3%. He's given up a little bit of premium contact. 44.8% hard hits, 10.4% barrels, still only amounts to 2.54% home runs on 89, pushing 90 miles an hour of exit velo. So this part isn't great, but he's been able to manage it. He keeps the ball down somewhat effectively, 12.2 degrees average launch angle. That's good enough that it limits the home runs despite the premium contact. They turn into a lot of line drives, a lot of long fly balls. He's just a dominant strikeout pitcher. 13% swinging strike rate, pushing a 30% CSW is excellent. Yeah, MLB app just says left with the trainer for Ohtani too. It doesn't give any specifics. I gotta think that keeps him out of tonight's game. I can't imagine he would end up in the lineup tonight. Bodijan says the road to 420 subs before the World Series gains another one. I love it. 500 by football season. 2 more weeks. We could get there. Outside shot, but 420 by the World Series. I like that. That's a good goal. So. Orioles bats against Gausman. Gausman's going to be a priority, even if he's popular. I think I'm just going to be around the field levels. I don't mind taking an option like him around the field on a pretty limited slate. He's got the highest ceiling on the board. Considering that there's an innings cap on Kershaw, there's an innings cap on Sale, and a quality cap on Sale, if we're being honest. There's innings caps on guys like Urquidy, guys like Detmers aren't on the FanDuel slate, so you got to choose between them. Savali, as good as he might be, as many innings as he might give us, and clean innings against that Rockies team, with a few bonus strikeouts for him and for the price, he's got a lower ceiling by far than Kevin Gausman for strikeout upside for, on any given slate. So Gausman's our guy in terms of actual ceiling. If we're around the field, I don't mind it. It's a high price to pay. You're paying a popularity tax. You're paying a salary tax. But I think it's worth getting to here. At the same time, I'm going to draw some shares of the Orioles. I'll probably try to get ahead of the field against the Orioles, particularly if Gausman's that high owned as I expect him to be. I would think that the Orioles would slip a little bit below the radar, and it's a really high quality lineup on the other side here. If we're targeting some of the premium contact he's given up, I think we do have guys who can manage to hit home runs, elevate the ball a little bit despite his knack for keeping it down, and maybe we get some of the home runs. So I do think there's a lot of upside. You start off the Orioles lineup with a very low strikeout, high walk option in Adley Rutschman, the top catcher option on this slate probably. 5,400 from the where you need catchers. 3,000 on the FanDuel slate is very cheap for his quality. 16 home runs this year, a 156 ISO is fine because he's got a 122 WRC plus. Gets on at a 369 clip as a catcher, given a 13.2% walk rate. He puts everything in play. Really like Adley off the top on both sides. I have no issues rostering him like he's a first baseman on the FanDuel slate. Gunnar Henderson, tied for the team lead with 21 home runs and 458 plate appearances, 10.9% barrels, 52.8% hard hits. Fills third base and shortstop on both sides. 5,100, still cheap. 3,400, still cheap. He's the most expensive player on this team on the FanDuel slate, or tied for it with Cedric Mullins from later in the lineup. Second most to Adley on this team on the DK slate, and he's still too cheap. 232 ISO, 121 mark for run creation this year. He's been excellent. Santander, 3,800, 3,000. I don't understand why he's so inexpensive across both sides. 21 home runs on the season. He's been paused there for a minute. 241, 248, 323, 459. Still a 212 ISO, 114 WRC plus. He's been a consistent power hitter for the last handful of seasons. He's a very good bat. He's always hitting third, switch hitter, always in the lineup. I don't get why he's always so cheap. 6.21 in the home run model, outfield and first base eligibility for 3,000 on FanDuel. Tons of value there. Ryan Mountcastle, 4,300, 3,100, tons of power, 17 home runs, a 204 ISO, 115 WRC plus. Fantastic premium contact profile. 14.2% barrels, 47.9% hard hits. Park limits right-handed power a little bit. We know that, but Mountcastle's got enough to overcome it, even against a pitcher like Gausman. Ryan O'Hearn's been terrific for the money. 3,000, 2,700, first base and outfield on both sites. Not a good hitter in his career. This is the best season I think that he's ever had that I can remember anyway. Best stretch of 250 plate appearances. 297, 336, 504. He's got a 207 ISO, 128 WRC plus, 10 home runs. As long as his price stays cheap, as long as he's in the heart of this lineup, you can absolutely go to that lefty bat. 3,000, 2,700. He has not gained a millimeter in terms of the price. So just keep going there. It's worth getting to. Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, two excellent options in the heart of the lineup. Cedric Mullins is the better of the two players. Hayes has had a productive year, 112 WRC plus from the right side, 443 plate appearances, 12 homers, a 280 average, 325, 451 on the back of the triple slash. But Cedric Mullins is a guy I'm really interested in. High price, but he's a 30-30 player in a healthy season. This year, in half a season, he's got 10 homers and 15 steals. 112 WRC plus, a 186 ISO from the left side. Excellent option late in the lineup. Jordan Westburg and Ramon Urias, two good options for cheap prices. Triple position eligibility for Urias at 2,600. A lot of power from the right side for him. Well, not a lot of power, but sneaky power from the right side for him over the last couple of seasons is the right way to say that. I like the late lineup option. 16 home runs and 445 plate appearances last year. So just a guy when he's late in the lineup for cheap prices, sneaky power. Jordan Westburg, a premium prospect that's kind of flying under the radar for this team right now. 149 plate appearances, 266, 302, 410, a 93 WRC plus. Hasn't been great, but is expected to hit at this level. Second and third base eligible for 35 on DK. Shortstop third base for 25 on FanDuel. Very interesting option. 2 home runs, 3 steals in the small sample. So I like this Orioles lineup top to bottom. If they're going to be really low owned against Gausman, I'll try and get ahead of the field and take my shots while also having a lot of the pitcher in a lot of my other lineups. Both-sided option for sure. Dean Kramer, 6,700, 8,000, 25 point fantasy projection on the FanDuel scale. Definitely puts him in play. Tough matchup against the Blue Jays, but they're kind of underperforming the whole season. D says he doesn't get enough rest, to be honest. I assume he's talking about me. Got to jabber my way through a lot of these things. I know you're not talking about me, but didn't sleep much again last night. But we press on. At least I was up to play the early slate. Let me actually check how that's going. I had a bunch of chasers in that slate. See what's going on the early real quick. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe. We've backslid the wrong way. Shit. A couple lineups in play, but doesn't look like we got enough innings left to get there. Man, what a middle kind of a slate. 6 runs, 3 teams with 6 runs, some 5-run totals, 4-run totals. Cards were good early, I know that. Who topped the pitching board on this slate? Kirby topped the pitching board. Kerry Carpenter, a big day. Trace Thompson, a big day. Had shares of all these guys. Did come together right. We press on. Yeah, I figured it, Tony. Stephen Leibowitz says Seattle has come back from down 3-1, 4-3 lead in the ninth now. They're not fond of losing right now. Yeah, that's for sure. I hadn't seen that, but yeah, they've been on a tear. And they're a really, really good team. Somebody tweeted out their run was actually better than the Rays run to start the season, apparently, over like the last month. Somebody's tweet was like, hey, it's, the Rays went this and the baseball world was going nuts. And now the Mariners have gone this over the last, 35, 40 days or whatever. And nobody's saying anything. I don't think nobody's saying anything. I think they were just being bitter, but it was an interesting point. So Kramer's interesting. 21.2% strikeout rate, a 4.50 ERA, a 4.48 xFIP, giving up way too much premium contact. But on a short slate, given the value pricing, given the struggles of this Toronto lineup, they're a low strikeout group. Most of their key hitters are low strikeout guys. That's problematic. But I do think as a value dart at worst, especially on DK for 67 as an SP2, there's value in Dean Kramer. Not one to go crazy with. One of the lower priority options, but definitely on the board where other guys are just not on the board. So, interesting option there. I definitely think you draw Blue Jays against him. Whit Merrifield's a good player, 4,500, 3,000, second base and outfield eligible on FanDuel. Outfield only now on DK. 23 steals, 11 home runs, a 109 WRC+. Very effective at getting on base, correlating directly with Bo Bichette, Brandon Belt, Vladdy Guerrero, George Springer. A lot of good names through here. Bichette's been mostly excellent all season. 5,400, 3,300 feels a little cheap for him. 319, 350, 498, 134 WRC+. Missed a little time, but still 486 plate appearances. Pretty complete sample. Belt has been excellent in his 352. 14 home runs at 218 ISO. Creating runs 35% better than average to lead this team. Getting on base at a 372 clip. 13.1% barrel rate. And yet he costs 3,500, 2,900. It makes sense on DK a little bit because he conflicts with Vladdy Guerrero positionally because they've got them both at first base. On FanDuel, it doesn't matter that they're both first basemen. It's just a cheap value price for an excellent bat from the left side. Vladdy underperforming the entire season, 18 home runs on 168 ISO. Really disappointing here. Contact profile still there. At some point, he should start hitting. I would just keep saying it. He hasn't been awful. 268, 346, 436 from a lot of players. You'd be like, nice little season. 18 home runs. Nice little season. From Vladdy, that's way under. George Springer, 15 homers, 16 steals. Dalton Varsho, 16 homers, 15 steals. Both having fairly disappointing seasons. Both very affordable from the right side and the left side. Matt Chapman hits the ball very, very well. 17.2% barrels, 57% hard hits. 15 homers, 186 ISO. Kind of disappointing output. Given this amazing contact profile, he should have a few more homers, higher ISO. But he's been good. He's been effective. A 115 WRC+ that's been above the waterline all season. And he's affordable at third base. Alejandro Kirk, Kevin Kiermaier, mix and match parts, catcher and outfield. Cheap, easy to get to. Toronto bats play 1 through 7. Fairly high priority options there. If you're going to Toronto, some very good hitters there. They're like a mid-board overall stack. No, a little higher than that, actually. 4th by fantasy point projections. 4th by FanDuel value, 6th by DK value, points per dollar, and 6th by home runs. So I guess that is, upper middle of today's board on a 6-gamer. So we talked about the Orioles. So this is kind of a 4-sided one. Kevin Gausman definitely well at the top of the board. I'd go Gausman. Got to go Blue Jays bats next, I guess. So Gausman, Blue Jays bats. Orioles bats, Dean Kramer value darts. Don't get overexposed to the Kramer play, but for value darts for sure. Definitely is an SP2 on DK. Charles Moran, yo, what's up, buddy? Monty Pritchett, Mariners are on an incredible run. It's still 3rd place in the West. Are they 3rd place? Ridiculous. I hadn't looked at the standings in a little bit. That's what happens when the Yankees fall off so badly. I don't really, obviously I'm going to watch the playoffs and I'll be very invested in what's going on and everything. But I don't follow the minute by minute, blow by blow That's hard to say. Minute by minute, blow by blow. There you go. Playoff race. A lot of the time, because like, for DFS purposes, it obviously just doesn't matter. What do we got? 71-55. Game behind the Astros, or half a game behind the Astros, game behind the Rangers. That is a tight race. Do all three of those teams make the playoffs, though? What's the 598? Nah, the Rays make the playoffs ahead of those guys. We got 2 spots, so one of those teams will make it. Yeah, that's an interesting race. Angels 11 games back, 484 winning percentage. Like, who were they kidding when they said the Trout was coming back because they were in a competitive race? 4 games below 500 with 11 games out of the West. They're fooling themselves. All right, let's move on from this one. Dodgers bats, major play. Going to be pretty popular on this one, I would expect. Mookie, Freddie off the top, Will Smith, obvious options. Max Muncy, tons and tons of power. Chris Taylor, better against lefties, but does have power, does have multi-position eligibility from both sides. 13 home runs, a 203 ISO, 98 WRC plus overall. Not good in the triple slash overall, but a veteran guy with a lot of pop in his bat. So I think you can get to Chris Taylor in the 5th spot in the lineup. Enrique Hernandez, kind of a flawed journeyman option. 232, 286, 338. Has definitely had better seasons at the plate. 7 home runs. On the right night, you get a very cheap little bit of pop, but at multiple positions. I actually prefer Taylor here. James Outman, Ahmed Rosario, Miguel Rojas. Kind of a different version of the Dodgers lineup than I was expecting. Doesn't have the upside of the David Peralta and Jason Hayward joining James Outman as cheap outfield options on the left side. What the hell is going on outside? It's either thunder or like a garbage truck just exploded outside. Which would be the second time since I've lived here that a garbage truck exploded outside. Did you ever wake up in the middle of the night to a fireman banging on your door yelling, "Get out, get out, get out"? It's not the most comfortable feeling in the world. Went rushing to the window and threw back the blinds, so I kind of opened it up. I didn't throw back the sash like in the Christmas Carol, but I peeked out through the blinds and there was a massive fire and a garbage truck was on fire and like 4 cars directly in front of my apartment, like across. It's like you walk up the steps outside my apartment. I live in the downstairs. You walk outside, cross the sidewalk, and then there's just parallel parked cars. Like 4 of those were on fire. One of them eventually exploded. It's pretty nuts. This is like 8 years ago. It was one of the first times that the girl I was with at the time slept over. So obviously had to wake her, had to remember that she was there, wake her in a panic, get her out, grab the cat, grab the dog, get out of the house. We ended up sitting across the street on the curb for like, I don't know, an hour and a half while they put out the fire. The building next door caught fire. The whole like big awning thing melted for the store. It was a total mess. But we were okay. Our building didn't catch fire. They put out the cars. They're like burnt out husks like you see in like a war movie out in front of my house the next morning. But we were okay, fortunately. I hope there's not another garbage truck on fire outside is what my point is. If I go running, that's what happened. But I think we're okay. Just a lot of weird, loud banging out there. Charles Moran says I was in 2 of the worst residential fires in the history of New York. Yikes. People jumped 25. Oh, my God. That's not good, Charles. That's not a fun story, buddy. I'm glad you're okay. Glad you're still with us. That is definitely... Mine was just kind of like, I'm sure it was bad for the people's cars. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was killed as far as I know. I was trying to be a little lighthearted about it, but good God, man. Yeah, that sounds awful. I'm glad you're here, buddy. Larry C says I had someone set off a fire alarm at like 3 a.m. on Bleecker Street years ago. Yeah, that's another fun one when it's a whole building has to clear out because some idiot set off the fire alarm. Had a lot of those back in the day in college. Slept through a lot of those back in the day in college where it was like, hey, we didn't see you outside for the fire drill. Was like, fire drill? Let's keep on rolling. So the Dodgers, I kind of skipped over the Xavier Curry part of it. I do think if you want to throw a couple value darts, 5,200, 5,900, at least he's crazy cheap, but you're doing it against the Dodgers. It's just, we always run into that wall of like, do we really want to target the Dodgers with this play? And I don't think so. If he had a worse opponent, then sure. Given that it's a very short slate overall in terms of pitching with some innings caps that we've talked about, there's the idea of a few clean innings. 6 starts, 75 innings in the show this year. He's got a 3.24 ERA, but a 5.19 xFIP. That's the more realistic number. 2.60 home run rate on 8.5% barrels, but 45.3% hard hits, pushing 92 miles an hour of exit velo, again against the Dodgers. He's gotten 3 full starts in a row. He went 5 innings twice. He went 6 in the most recent start. In that game, he struck out 6 of 23 Tigers, walked 2, allowed 1 earned run on 5 hits, but the Tigers are notably not the Los Angeles Dodgers. Given that it's a weaker back end than I was expecting, I'd give him a little bit of a nudge, a little bit of a value dart endorsement. Very, very limited shares. Only because he costs 5,200. He's less expensive than 3 of the Dodgers hitters today on the DK slate. He's only a little bit more expensive than the Dodgers' most expensive hitters on the FanDuel slate. So he's very easy to get to, and then you grab some expensive bats from other teams, but he's a very limited option. Again, 17% strikeout rate at best, 5.19 xFIP, almost 92 miles an hour of exit velo, on, by the way, a 21.1 degree average launch angle. So that's up in the air. That's not keeping the ball down. He's gotten lucky to keep home runs to just 2.6%, given this contact profile. It is much more likely that the Dodgers just crush this pitcher than that he succeeds here. So very, very limited value darts. But I do think it's a slate on which we want to embrace some risk on the mound. Clay Kershaw on the other side. I think we're dealing with 85 pitches. I think we're dealing with 5 innings. If he has a couple pitches left in the tank, maybe he goes back out and chases the 6th inning, chases the quality start. But I think they'll be happy with like 5. If we're looking at the game log and what he's done in the recent couple starts, I think I put it in the article. Actually, I probably don't need to pull up the game log, but whatever. 5 innings exactly in each of those starts. Faced 18 hitters, faced 19 hitters, struck out 4 in the first game, struck out 2 in the second game against the Rockies and against the Brewers. Given the opponent on the other side, I think there's plenty of upside for clean innings for Kershaw. The Guardians, one of the worst teams in baseball for run creation, but they're very, very good at avoiding strikeouts. Steven Kwan and Jose Ramirez most in particular. Tyler Freeman's in here at 15.1%. They've got Eric Haas in here now at 27%. Oscar Gonzalez at 22%. Ramon Laureano at 29%. So it's actually higher than it typically would be, which lends a little bit of upside to Kershaw. And it's really pretty non-threatening hitters that get those strikeout rates. It's not like they're dropping a bunch of premium home run hitters in here. So a little bit of an uptick for Kershaw, given a few bonus strikeouts with this version of the lineup. Miles Straw, very low-end strikeout guy, but also a very low-end player in general on the offensive side of the game. Rocio, 28.8%. Gabriel Arias, scary power bat when he connects. 7 home runs in 238 plate appearances, only a 132 ISO, though. Sub-Mendoza output, 44.4% hard hits, but a 33.2% strikeout rate. I do think he's an interesting power bat. He's my third, actually in this version of the lineup, he's my second favorite hitter. No Andres Jimenez. So you got Jose Ramirez down to Gabe Arias, separated by 5 hitters. This is not a good lineup. Not good for stacking. A little bit of a bump to Clay Kershaw here, given this version of the lineup. I was expecting fewer strikeouts, so I like the Kershaw play even better now. 99, 110, 8, a little bit of a boost to his ceiling if he finds a few additional strikeouts. I still think we're only getting him for 5 innings, but a little bit of additional upside. If you go to the Guardians, it's just a contrarian move. It's a hedge position to any Kershaw, and you're doing it with a really low-end team. I would prioritize Jose Ramirez. I would put Gabriel Arias into that lineup. And then, God, I don't even know what. Steven Kwan is an obvious option for a little bit of correlated scoring. He needs to get himself on base. He does that okay. 341 is a good on-base percentage. It's just not good enough to keep him much above the waterline for run creation. Laureano for very cheap prices at 28-24. A little bit of home run upside, a little bit of stolen base upside, but has not been good at all this season. Oscar Gonzalez has 2 home runs this season in 152 plate appearances. He hit a handful last year. 11 in 382 with a good triple slash last year, but hasn't been that guy this season. He's going up against Clay Kershaw. Don't like it. Eric Haas hasn't been good at all this season. 4 home runs, a .083 ISO, 4.8% barrels from a guy that's out there to be a catcher who hits home runs. Tyler Freeman, Rocchio, straw at the bottom of the lineup. It's a very weak stack. Be like 1, 2. I'd probably go 1, 2, 3. Since I'm on DK, 4, 5. That's probably my 5-man DK. Laureano or Gonzalez are mix and match parts either way. Not great. Dodgers I'm much more enthusiastic about. They're difficult to get to. They're expensive up at the top. But obviously you've got 2 superstars. You've got an excellent catcher. You've got an excellent power hitter. And then good options through these 4 guys. It's not that weak a Dodgers lineup. It's just a different version of the Dodgers lineup. I do like 3 of those 4 guys. Enrique Hernandez is kind of limited at this point in his career. Clay Kershaw, Dodgers bats. Clay just because of the innings cap, the ceiling cap. Dodgers bats up top. Clay Kershaw, Xavier Curry value darts, and then Guardian stacks. It's really weak on the Cleveland side. Mets and the Braves. Jose Quintana, another guy, just kind of limited by the opponent here, I think. So this is the other thing about the short slate in terms of the capped good pitchers. Guys like Quintana, who could be on the board for value in a lot of other spots, facing a team like the Braves, really limits a lot of these options. I'm much more interested in Charlie Morton on the other side going up against the Mets. I do think if you want to go to Quintana, you at least have a little justification around the very limited home run rate he's allowed so far, the excellent contact profile he's limited hitters to in only 35 2/3, 6 starts. 16.9% strikeouts isn't good, though. 3.03 ERA, a 5.07 xFIP isn't great. There's not a lot to really target here. Could succeed. Very, very tough road to success, though. I really don't see it. The best that Quintana, I think, does tonight is maybe he takes the home runs away from the Braves for 5 innings. But there's not a lot of visible road to success. We've gotten 6, maybe. All right, so maybe he takes the home runs away from the Braves for 6 innings. Does he find enough strikeouts to really pay off a big salary for the risk? We do have to embrace risk on this slate. I did say that. So at 71.84, it's a much better DK play. Uncomfortable on both sites. I think I'm going to embrace risk, but I might do it in other spots on the FanDuel slate for 8.4. He's on the board on DK a lot more at 7.1, but very limited. You're hoping for some clean innings. You got to find a few lucky strikeouts against a team that, they're not excellent at limiting strikeouts, but they're also, none of those guys are in the 30s with all that power, with all those threatening hitters. Kevin Pillar in the 2 spot. Michael Harris slides down the lineup. That's interesting today. Take the pressure off of Harris, maybe get him going again. 107 WRC plus, 11 homers, 17 steals, 282, 330, 447 for Harris. He's having a very good season overall, but obviously had dips and dives throughout the season. Orlando Arcia is a great option down bottom. If you don't want his price, you go to Vaughn Grissom. High-end prospect for them, 3,400, 2,200. Plays the same shortstop position as Arcia, but a little bit cheaper with a very effective bat that should play well at the major league level. And then you've got all the ridiculous power from these guys. Just an excellent option, top to bottom against Quintana here. Tons of right-handed power. The lefties that are in this lineup, you don't worry about lefty-lefty. Matt Olson has tremendous power lefty-lefty, especially against a contact-oriented lefty like this. Not worried about it at all. 4 guys in the lineup above the magic number for home runs. That's Acuna, Austin Riley, Matt Olson, kind of obvious, and Marcell Ozuna. He's got 27 on the season. We keep on talking about over the last couple of days how he'd be the best player on a lot of teams in baseball, and he keeps on delivering. He had another monster day at the plate yesterday. So let's say it again. Could be the best player on a lot of these teams. If he was on the Guardians, he'd be second behind Jose Ramirez. If he was on the Nationals, he'd be easily the best player on that team. If he was on the Rockies, he'd be by far the best player on that team right now. Ozuna's really good, and he's only 3,000, 4,500. 21% better than average for run creation at 249 ISO, 27 homers. There's nothing not to like. 15.8% barrels, 49% hard hits. Dynamite. Sean Murphy, 16.5% barrels, 45.1% hard hits. There's nothing to dislike about him either. He slips just below the magic number at 9.02 for a home run, but 20 on the season at 254 ISO. Next best catcher option on the slate just because he loses plate appearances compared to Adley Rutschman from the top spot, but obviously the best spot for power upside. Major source of upside at the catcher spot. Will Smith is also in that discussion from the Dodgers lineup, obviously. Riley's one of the best third basemen in baseball. Olson's the best power hitter at first base in baseball with 43 home runs on the season, one of the best power hitters overall in the sport. Acuna is one of the best players overall, full stop. 28 home runs, 58 stolen bases, a 165 WRC plus. Braves up and down, much as you can get them, much as you want them, in combination with one another, in any combination of basically 1 through 9. Playable 1 through 9 today. Pilar as a price offset, 2,600, particularly at 2,100 on the FanDuel slate. 229, 259, 414, whatever. He's got a 186 ISO, 6 home runs, 3 stolen bases. Effective enough veteran bat from that spot in the lineup. On the Mets side, going up against Charlie, 9,000, 10,000 for Charlie. He obviously projects out fairly well. Veteran guy, been a bit of a roller coaster this year. An 11.2% walk rate is concerningly up from the 8.7 last year, the 7.7 the year before. Strikeouts are down, 28.2%, 28.6%, down to 24.7% this year. Still a very good swinging strike rate and a very good CSW, though. And these haven't really changed from this year. So it's kind of a weird dip. Haven't really changed from that year either. Just finishing fewer hitters off, but throwing the same amount of strikes. Weird little combination of factors there. A lot of them turn into walks, I guess. But you would think that would have a little bit of a bigger dip in the CSW. But anyway, 2.20% home run rate on only 88.7 miles an hour of exit velo, only a 9.3 degree average launch angle, and 7.5% barrels. So by and large, still keeping the ball in the yard pretty effectively. 3.54 ERA, a 4.24 xFIP. Still a very effective pitcher. Just a little bit more of a roller coaster than we were used to in years past with Charlie, where he's been a very, very effective pitcher. Little bit more risk maybe, but one of the safer options on the slate, one of the higher ceiling guys on the slate. 9,000, not that much for him either on the DK board. 10,000, you're paying full freight for him on FanDuel, but I think he's one of the better options to go to. You get the top heavy Mets, Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, your obvious priorities in that Mets lineup. It's those three guys and then a lot of bolt-on parts for the Mets these days. Francisco Alvarez, good as he's been, good as he was earlier in that run that he made, 21 home runs at 231 ISO on the overall for the season, but he's cooled really dramatically. 218, 288, 450, still at a 104 WRC plus, has tons of any given slate upside, plays a premium position at 3,800, 2,800, but on a day where we've already talked about several catchers that are more premium options than him, he just kind of falls into the also ran bucket. That might give him a little bit of value if he starts to slip for low ownership. He does have an 8.67 in the home run model. So if he's very low owned and if you're going to Met stacks, he's definitely a high priority hitter amongst these guys. But he's not as good as Alonso. He's not as good as Lindor. He's certainly not as good as Nimmo at the top of the lineup with all his plate appearances and his cheap pricing. So Alvarez a little bit more of a mixer than he's been, slipped in terms of his priority. McNeil, slap hitter, gets himself involved up to a 99 WRC plus, 268, 337, 356. A little bit of a surge. The BABIPs come around a little bit. As long as he can correlate directly with Alonso, with the lefty power of Vogelback and DJ Stewart, who are both putting bat on ball very effectively. Stewart obviously in a much smaller sample, but he does have 6 home runs and a 308 ISO in that 77 plate appearances. He did hit a good handful of home runs 2 years ago. Vogelback has been a more reliable power hitter over the course of his career. He's got 11 in 277 plate appearances this year, pushing a 49.4% hard hit rate that actually leads this team. Only 3,000, 2,400 at first base, a viable option. Ortega, Mendick, kind of mix and match guys down the bottom of the lineup. I prefer Ortega, 2,400, 2,500 in the outfield. Mendick, kind of a low-end guy if you need an infielder, not really an offensive contributor. Does have multi-position eligibility for 25-22, so limited shares of Danny Mendick in stacks of Mets. Not really a guy you want to one-off at either of those positions. Priority Mets are here, 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 and then like one of these three guys. Lindor's got great counting stats, 23 homers, 22 steals, 24% better than average creating runs. Nimmo's got tons of individual upside, 28% better than average creating runs. Alonso at a 134 WRC plus and 39 home runs this season. Mike Sherman of the New York Post wrote his season off way too early. I think it was Sherman. Might not have been. Might have been somebody else. Whoever it was wrote a whole thing that I talked about around when Alonso was hurt for like 2 weeks. Oh, it's a lost season for Pete Alonso. He's been so bad, blah, blah, blah. It was right after he came back, like 10 days after he came back. Not going to get it together, et cetera, et cetera. 39 home runs, 307 ISO. Ridiculous. Still cheap, 5,100, 3,900. Cheap on DK anyway. 39 is an effective price for him on FanDuel. A little bit cheap. $200 cheap maybe. But a premium home run hitter. 12.04 in the model today. Braves bats. Charlie Morton. Mets bats. Jose Quintana darts just because there's not a lot of other spots to turn. Boston and the Astros, we probably got lineups in this one already. 5:21. All right, I got to keep in mind the slate starts at 6:40. So 20 minutes to finish this one off. I think we can do this. Boston lineup. The Astros lineup. Last game on the FanDuel slate. FanDuel's got a little bit of a sprint slate tonight. Should be a fun one. We get started at 6:40, and the last game gets going at 8:10 out of Houston. It's a little bit of a fun sprint for FanDuel. DK board is stretched out a little bit more. 7:05. That last game starts at 9:38, and might be, very, very interesting lineups in that last game. So a lot of question marks in that one for the DK crowd. We'll get into that one in a sec. Let's take a look at the Red Sox and the Astros, though. Chris Sale, like I said, he projects out okay. That's a 5-inning cap. I went in and deliberately only put 5 innings on him. In his starts back. This is his third start back. He went 4 2/3 in the first outing, struck out 7 of 16 Tigers, allowed 2 earned runs. That's kind of the ceiling. That's a good start. That's a good start for the money. In the second start, went 4 1/3, gave up 3 runs, 2 earned on 2 hits, struck out just 3, walked 3. Limited outing that time. Yeah, assuming that we get 5 innings, they let him pitch in the 5th in each of those starts. Assuming 5 innings, it's still the Astros on the other side. They're very, very good, if you're not familiar, against left-handed pitching. They're very good in general, but against lefties, the active roster has a 18% strikeout rate to lead baseball. They've also got a 128 WRC plus to sit second overall for run creation. They have a 200 ISO that sits 4th overall in the split against lefties. They're an elite group against lefties. So even if this was Chris Sale, fully healthy, 6 innings, 7 innings, whatever you can get, Chris, go out there and knock it dead, I would have limited expectations for him. Especially this version of him that's given up a few home runs. Not that it's been tragic for power by any means. 33.9% hard hits, 88.6 miles an hour of exit velo, 7.3% barrels, 3.17% home runs, a 3.75 xFIP, a 4.50 ERA. The swinging strikes, the strike throwing is there. The walks are okay. The whip is okay. But just a more limited version of Sale. I would probably lean more into the Astros side and hope that I got them low owned and he was high owned or whatever. That might still end up being the case today, even with 5 innings. Maybe people go there on a limited board. But for me, this is an option I plan to be pretty hesitant about. Just given the diminished version of Sale that we've had over the course of the season, 28.5% strikeouts. That's, we don't have a visible sample here, do we? 28.4% 2 years ago. And not in the thing from, damn it, I forgot that it's not there. There it is. Yeah, that's right. 35.6%. That's right. He was out in 2020 also. 35.6% strikeout rate 4 years ago in the most recent complete full season sample. He's not that guy anymore, was the point I was trying to make there. So I'm very hesitant to recommend Chris Sale. I think he should be cheaper than this on this slate. If he was at 75 on DK and 83 on FanDuel, I'd be much more enthusiastic about the spot. Given the pricing, I think you can play him. I think the slate mandates that you at least take a few shots, given the limited pitching board. But the ceiling is capped around this projection. I don't think there's much more room beyond that projection. So you need a lot of the other options to go pop. Fortunately, it's a day where everything else might go pop around him. Odds are one of the guys succeeds or 2 of them, but it might be a very limited pitching slate. Unlike yesterday where just so many pitchers succeeded. Jose Urquidy on the other side, 6,300, 6,900. Urquidy, 20.6% strikeout rate, 5.21 ERA, a 4.74 xFIP. He has made 3 appearances since he came back on August 6th. That first appearance, 3 1/3. He allowed 5 runs on a home run, 3 hits to the Yankees in the Bronx, struck out 1, walked 3. 5 innings start his next time out against the Angels. He struck out 7, walked 0, allowed a lone run on 3 hits. Obviously, I'm reading this. I wouldn't normally say allowing a lone run. I would write it, but I wouldn't normally say it. So that's directly out of the article, which is on rotoscouts.com, by the way, for the newcomers. Totally free. Most recent appearance, 2 innings out of the bullpen against Seattle. Struck out 3 of 8, walked, allowed 2 hits, no runs, no walks. Probably limited to around 5 innings also. Pretty limited ceiling anyway. 20.6% strikeout guy. 19% over 164 1/3 last year. 3.94 ERA, a 4.32 xFIP. Gave up a bunch of home runs, bunch of premium contact. Year before in 107 innings, 21.3% strikeouts. Limited ERA. It was okay ERA, okay xFIP. But a lot of home runs again, a lot of premium contact. So I think he's a fairly targetable pitcher with bats. I don't know how much Urquidy we want to get exposed to. So remember, I said this is a very sneakily limited pitching slate. I think he's going to be capped somewhere near this kind of a number in terms of his overall ceiling today. 5 innings, maybe he gets 6, but he's got the Red Sox on the other side. It's not like it's a pushover. Sox lineup, I like this quite a bit. Rafi Devers was the overall home run pick on the day. 56, 38, too cheap. 29 home runs, 253 ISO, 130 WRC plus. Tons and tons of premium contact. Rafi Devers is Rafi Devers. There's no reason that he should be as cheap as he is. He's come up a little bit since we started saying that he was too cheap on DK. He was around 51 a couple weeks ago. His average has come up a little bit. I guess their algo really focuses on that batting average at the front end because that's the source of the dip for a lot of these guys. Austin Matthews agrees to a 4-year, $53 million extension with the Maple Leafs, hockey fans. No idea what we'll do for hockey. I know I got a thing on the site that says we're going to have hockey, but there's only so much to go around, and that's my lowest end sport. So we'll see what happens. Got a good model for it. We'll see. Not sure if that's a priority right now, but maybe we'll get there one day. So Urquidy is super limited. He's very, very cheap. So 6,300, 6,900. I do think you can throw some value darts at it, but it's value darts, most particularly as an SP2 on DK with a capped ceiling. And you're going up against the Sox. I greatly prefer the Red Sox side of things. If I'm going to Sox, Devers is my priority, but there's very good bats in this lineup. Verdugo's a very good option at the leadoff spot, 15.1% strikeouts, puts everything in play, 341 on base. He's had a rocky season overall, but he's very cheap for his talent. 106 WRC plus, even with the bumps, 341 on base, ahead of Devers, Justin Turner, Tristan Casas, Adam Duvall, Trevor Story. This is a dynamite core of hitters. No Yoshida in the lineup today. It's a little bit of a ding. We get min-priced Wilyer Abreu, who I believe is a lefty hitter, but he's not on the FanDuel slate. Don't know too much about him. We can take a quick look. Wilyer is 24 years old. He's ranked 17th organizationally as a prospect coming into the season with middling kind of grades, but did have 22 homers and 8 stolen bases in 363 plate appearances at Pawtucket this year. 20.4% strikeout rate and a 16.3% walk rate. Was good for walks last year in Double A as well. Double A last year was with Houston, it looks like. Looks like he bounced back and forth between Houston and Boston a couple times. Or that's probably just once and they just put it in the wrong order. Was pretty effective for very high walk rates in Double A last year. That's interesting. Interesting enough bat for the DK gamers. 2,000. If they put him on FanDuel, great, get to him. But for DK purposes, at the dead minimum price, that's an interesting enough hitter in this lineup. 3 plate appearances. Looks like he got himself on base twice and scored a run so far. Not bad. Interesting bat there in the 7th spot for the Red Sox. Just given how good he is, apparently, at drawing walks, and the idea that he's got a little bit of pop in that bat, that's not bad. Pablo Reyes, Connor Wong, effective enough mix-ins. Reyes 320, 358, 432, creating runs 14% better than average in a small sample. And Wong, an okay contact profile, 7 home runs in 313 cheap catcher plate appearances. Take Astros against Chris Sale. I think we can get there. No Jordan Alvarez in the lineup. That's a downgrade for sure. But you do get Chas McCormick hitting cleanup. That's a effective enough outfield bat given the price differential. 19 home runs, 14 stolen bases, a 150 WRC plus in 334 plate appearances. It's still an effective top 4. Jainer Diaz is still an effective bat. Jose Abreu back in the lineup. That's a weird one. 3,800, 2,700 for the catcher. Definitely an effective season for him. 18 home runs, 281, 297, 540. Has catcher and first base on DK. 3,800, 2,700. It's a good bat to get to in stacks of Astros. Obviously, you've got Altuve and Kyle Tucker. They're your 2 stars in this lineup. Altuve, 6,041 at second base. Totally worth paying for. 317, 407, 509. Creating runs 56% better than average. 253 plate appearances. Got 9 homers and 13 steals. He's a superstar. Tiny little superstar. I both love and hate Jose Altuve. It's annoying. He's too good a player to really hate, but obviously a key part of all these Astros teams that obviously, for my reasons, I don't necessarily like. I think a lot of people don't really like these Astros. I think Altuve takes a lot of dings around the industry, but he's going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, no bones about it. He's amazing. Tucker, 25 homers, 24 steals, a 145 WRC plus. Bregman, tons of power for a fair price, 5,336 at third base, 20 home runs on the season. Only a 176 ISO, very limited contact profile. It's just kind of who Bregman is, though. Doesn't really strike out, draws walks. Going up against this limited version of Sale, given how good this Astros team is against lefties, Tucker loses nothing lefty-lefty, by the way. Just as good against lefties as he is against righties. Same was true for Alvarez, who's not in the lineup. But even with Alvarez out of the lineup, it's a premium spot. Abreu's been bad for the better part of the last year and a half. He got himself up to 10 home runs, got himself up to a 75 WRC plus. So the July and August performances that we saw from him were a little bit better. Obviously hasn't seen a lot of playing time of late. Jeremy Pena, late in that lineup, has been bad for most of the season. 2,900, 3,000. He's a mix-in option. 10 home runs, 10 steals, only an 89 WRC plus. Jake Myers and Martin Maldonado mix and match parts late in that lineup. So the high priority guys are 1 through 5. You get effective mix-ins though. These guys aren't, well, I don't want to say they're not bad. They're playable parts in this lineup for cheap prices. Red Sox bats, Astros bats. How does it rank out on the board? I think the Astros are higher ranked, but I kind of like the Red Sox spot going up against Urquidy a little bit better, because there is the option that the possibility that Sale comes in, finds 6 strikeouts in his 4 or 5 innings, and takes the top off the Astros for 2 turns through the lineup. That's a little bit of a concern in going to Astros. That's why I kind of like the Red Sox a little bit better. A lot less of a chance Jose Urquidy does that. Red Sox right in the middle of the board. 7th by fantasy point projection, 7th and 8th respectively FanDuel DK points per dollar, and 8th for home run upside. Given that I've got Devers as my home run pick, I'm putting the Red Sox up top. So I'm going Red Sox. Astros do rank 3rd, but only 9th on both sites by points per dollar, but they bounce back to 3rd for home run upside. That was done with Alvarez in the lineup though. So given that he's not in the lineup, a little bit of a ding there. That evens them out. Red Sox, Astros, Sale, Urquidy, both very limited. That does it for the FanDuel slate. Good luck, blue site gamers. If you got to punch out and go build lineups, I understand. It is coming up on an hour till showtime, till slate lock. Gonna try and get through this one in a hurry so that I can build lineups. Reed Detmers against Brett Kennedy, presumably. I assume this is the pitching matchup if nothing changes. Probably not going to get Ohtani in this Angels lineup. I doubt they've updated anything. Oh, no, they did. Look at that. Look at Labs on top of things. Let me grab this updated lineup. Angels still do have a lot of interesting bats. Obviously, there's a Mike Trout lurking in that lineup. That's a major source of upside. 61, he's full priced on DK. 36 for Mike Trout on FanDuel, a little bit cheap. 18 home runs on the board, 227 ISO, 134 WRC plus. They obviously held him out of the first game. Presumably, he's going in the second game. He'll have Nolan Shanuel hitting ahead of him, the rookie that was in college just a few weeks ago, 2,800, 2,700 at first base. Dynamite correlated scoring spot. Better when Ohtani's in the lineup ahead of Trout, obviously, but still hitting ahead of Mike Trout is one of the better correlated scoring spots in baseball. And then you've got a lot of really capable power bats down through this lineup. Moose has had a good year, 12 home runs in 307 plate appearances, 103 WRC plus, a 184 ISO, putting bat on ball fairly effectively for cheap prices at first and third base. Brandon Drury is a very good second baseman, 3,800, first and second on FanDuel for 2,800. He's got 18 home runs at 225 ISO and 11.1% barrel rate. Matt Thaiss barrels the ball, makes pretty good contact at catcher for only 2,600, 2,300. 8 homers in 287 plate appearances. Not great, not a tremendous option. That's why he's cheap, but an option that people tend not to go to that much. It is a deep catcher slate. You don't need to go here for your catcher, but he's on the board assuming that he plays lefty against a limited right-handed pitcher that we'll talk about in a sec. Hunter Renfroe, tremendous right-handed power. Mickey Moniak has backslid a little bit in recent weeks. Still does have 12 home runs on the season, a 216 ISO. Pretty good contact profile from the left side. Rengifo and Escobar, playable parts in the infield for cheap prices. I didn't really address Brett Kennedy off the top. He is a 29-year-old, made a 5-inning start for this team last week, struck out 2, walked 1 of 20 against the Blue Jays. No runs, only 3 hits. If you want him for 61, take him. Not really an option for me, I don't think. Seems limited. 12 innings, 2 starts, 12.2% strikeouts. To throw him into this Angels lineup, even with Shohei Ohtani out, I don't love that option. I think there's better values on the DK board. If you want to take a couple shots at the dart of 5 clean innings and 2 strikeouts, maybe a win, go for it. But I kind of like Reed Detmers on the other side of this one. I don't know what kind of win equity the Reds are even offering here. They're underdogs. They've only got a 3.93 implied total in this game. Angels pulling a 5.18. That was with Ohtani in the lineup, so maybe it comes down a little bit. But the Angels are still going to be favored here. I don't love the Brett Kennedy play. I do like Detmers for 7,600 by the 27.3% strikeout rate. 4.93 ERA isn't great, but a 4.19 xFIP is obviously more appealing. 9.6% walks is a little high, but the premium contact isn't bad. 6.5% barrels. This is a little high. This is a little high. 3.41% home runs is a little higher than you would want it, but it's not tragic. 6.5% barrels for a guy who gives up a 17-degree average launch angle is actually kind of impressive. I think Detmers is a good pitcher with a little bit of upside. Against a Reds lineup, this projected version of the lineup has a 30.7% strikeout rate. Granted, that's got Noelvi Marte in there at 50% in 8 plate appearances. Take them out, they're at 28.3. Still a lot of strikeouts. So pretty high ceiling on the board for Reed Detmers on a slate where for a lot of other starters, we're saying there's a pretty limited ceiling. He projects out well, and he's got ceiling beyond this number. So Detmers is a fairly high priority option on the DK slate. I assume he's going to be the second most popular pitcher behind Kevin Gausman. Maybe he even outstrips Gausman's pace, given that he's so cheap as the value guy that just combines with everybody. But I think he's a very high priority option that you probably just go to around the fields level. There's not a lot of great value pivots. Reds lineup, Ellie, Matt McClain, obviously 2 infield stars. Shortstop and second base only on the DK slate, 59.55. Spencer Steer, good option at 5,000. And then all the pricing drops off the table. So the Reds are actually an interesting value option, depending on who's in the lineup, obviously. But you've got Marte, third base only, 2,500. You've got Stuart Fairchild, who has a limited contact profile this year, but had an interesting one last year. Limited output, 5 home runs, 9 steals. But that's not terrible for DFS in 235 plate appearances for a very cheap outfield option. Tyler Stevenson, an affordable catcher bat with a 42.2% hard hit rate, 9 home runs in 424. That's an interesting enough catcher at the discount. Even on a deep catcher slate, not a lot of people going to go to it. I think that's somewhat in play. Luke Maile is a second catcher in that lineup, has 11.2% barrels, 5 homers in 146 plate appearances. It'd be a weird configuration if they roll 2 catchers in the second game of a doubleheader. We'll see what we get. But the point is, there will be a lot of value from Encarnacion Strand down. I didn't mean to bury the lead. 3,300 for Encarnacion Strand at first base. If there's no conflict positionally with Joey Votto, that is a major source of value. 45.2% hard hits in the show, 4 home runs in 116 plate appearances. In the minors this year, if you're not familiar with Encarnacion Strand, because they have so many good prospects to follow, in 316 plate appearances before the call-up, which came 116 plate appearances ago. So this was in a hurry. 20 home runs, a 306 ISO, a 152 WRC plus. He was slashing 331, 404, 405, 637. He's a tremendous hitter. So really like the option for Encarnacion Strand, assuming this spot in the lineup, that cheap a price, and no conflict at first base. If you get Joey Votto in there against a lefty, Votto's always an option for power. I do think the Reds play up and down the lineup, kind of as a interesting value stack, but I prefer the Detmer side of it, given all the strikeouts and given that he's going to be a very necessary piece of the value puzzle on DK. So this would probably go Angels bats even without Ohtani, Reed Detmers, tremendous value play over there. Reds bats, no real love for Brett Kennedy. That brings us up to the end of the slate. Larry says, I think Trout plays show it doesn't. Yeah, I agree with that. Weather concerns for LA Cleveland. That was a spot for weather. I do remember seeing that earlier in the day. Let's see if there's any updates. Again, just follow Kevin Roth for your updates. He's a dynamite weather option. Whether or not you subscribe to, didn't mean to do the double weather there. If you subscribe to LA Home Run, Matt McClain scores. You can expect more of that maybe later. Looks like he's okay with it. He says check back later on. Got some room to play with. Wind's blowing out to center field. Supports the upside for that excellent Dodgers stack. So seems pretty safe. I wouldn't be too concerned. Obviously, like I said, just follow Roth, follow the professionals in that. But I'm not concerned about it. I will have it in the pool. Let's get over to the board here. I got to get out of here and start building lineups. Less than an hour to go before the FanDuel slate starts. Aaron Savali on FanDuel, top of the board. Excellent matchup against the Rockies. Obviously, a little bit of a overall cap. Like this high projection is not probably all that shy of what his ceiling looks like today. He's a limited strikeout pitcher, but he was better for strikeouts, pushing 1-4 last year. So there's a little bit of additional strikeout ceiling for him. I love the spot for Aaron Savali. I don't think he's expensive enough on that FanDuel slate. Kevin Gausman is your high ceiling guy, easily the highest ceiling on this slate, and between the guys who are on both slates, by far the highest ceiling. Projects out neck and neck with Savali for the top of the board anyway. Obviously a higher price at $11,000, $10,600. Well worth it. Going to be popular. Easy to get to. Well worth getting to. Reed Detmer's on that DK board, $7,600. Dynamite option we just talked about. All the strikeout upside in the world against that Reds lineup. Not totally safe. There's plenty of value in that Reds lineup. There's plenty of very good young hitters that are exciting to watch. Ellie, who just hit his 11th home run of the season. 11 homers now, 20 steals, I believe the total is. So, fantastic players. McClain scored on that home run. That's a great combo off the top of that stack. Encarnacion Strand, I mentioned. Tons of value there. So, Detmers isn't safe. But amongst these guys that are below the $8,000 rate, gives you the most upside, gives you the highest ceiling, given his strikeout upside. Mackenzie Gore against the Yankees, I would put directly into that conversation with Detmers. He obviously doesn't project out as well. He's had a lot more issues of late with power, with home runs. He's pitching in Yankee Stadium. He's still got to face Aaron Judge a couple times, probably 3 times if we want to get him to the same level that Detmers is going to approach tonight. But at the same price, $200 less, I think he's probably your next man up for that value spot. If not him, then it's probably Dean Kramer going up against the Blue Jays for even less. There's a little bit of upside there, but he's another guy not safe. These projections are pretty real. The ceiling is probably in, this kind of a range for these two guys. So you've got ceiling beyond where they project for both of them, but they don't exceed the ceiling of a Detmers, of a Gausman. They don't, their ceiling is around where those guys project. I do think they're in the value conversation for sure, most specifically on DK. Limited shares on FanDuel. Sevy for me is just, I don't know. He's been shot in the foot. It's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where Donald Sutherland is running around the town and everybody's saying he talks to the dry cleaner guy and he's like, "That's not my wife." And he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "No, it looks like her, but that's not my wife." And he's like, "What do you mean?" He's just like, "I don't know. It's just not my wife." That's just not Luis Severino. It looks like him. He's pitching for the Yankees. He's wearing the same number, but that's not Luis Severino. I've seen Luis Severino. That's not him. Bad season for him. 6,654. I think you can throw a few value darts against the Nats. You hope to get the 6 strikeout game over 5 innings and get them out of there clean. It's about the upside for Sevy today. I skipped over Clay Kershaw. I skipped over Chris Sale. Both of those guys are dealing with innings caps. Both of these guys are at 5-inning projections in what you're looking at here, though. I prefer Clay Kershaw significantly to Chris Sale. I think Chris Sale could be in a lot of trouble in that spot. I don't know how much I'll get exposed to that, given that he's kind of high priced at 93. 85 on DK obviously is a better option. I think he's more in the conversation over there, but it's a really tough matchup against that Astros team. Really limits the strikeout ceiling. The innings are going to be limited. Could go out there and strike out 7, 8 in just 5 innings. It's on the board for Chris Sale. He's got that level of talent, but very limited trust in the upside there. I prefer the ceiling. I prefer the projection and the price for Clay Kershaw. I'm happy to pay 10, 8, 9, 9 for him against that Guardians team. They're decent at limiting strikeouts as well, though. And I do think given a 5-ish inning cap, an 85 pitch kind of a cap, his ceiling is not much further beyond this. So concerns around both of those options really makes it a shorter slate. And then you get Quintana against the Braves, Urquidy with a bit of an innings cap against the Red Sox, Austin Gomber against the Rays on FanDuel, Xavier Curry against the Dodgers with the wind blowing out on both sides, Brett Kennedy against the Angels. Man, this is an ugly pitching slate. Cue the perfect game for like Brett Kennedy or somebody. Xavier Curry, perfect game against the Dodgers. That's baseball. 546, gang. With that in mind, I appreciate everybody hanging out. Larry C., you're welcome, pal. Phil Still, you're welcome, pal. Thank you guys. It's all about you guys. Always appreciate you guys showing up, hitting that like button for me, following, jumping into the Discord. Tons of content in the Discord. I was tempted this morning to drop the early slate projections in the Discord. I do that from time to time for slates that I'm playing that aren't the main slate that go up on the website. But this morning I didn't, because then I realized that DK had a 7-gamer that started at 1 when FanDuel had a 4-gamer that started at noon, and it just wasn't worth the effort. Steven Leibowitz, you're welcome, pal. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Good luck out there, gang. Somebody go win something tonight. Dimitri, win something too, but somebody else also go win something. I'll see you later.